anything else at our disposal besides that.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that you really have tried to refine your craft and making sure that you're really good with this weapon. And I enjoy seeing your debates. Like, I honestly enjoy watching them as I'm moderating them. And I think other people are really starting to as well. But one of the things
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. One of the things I really noticed, though, in that conversation was that whole, the right just wants strength. They only respect strength. But I don't think that that's true. I was having a conversation before this one with a guy. We were talking about masculinity. And I think really what the right is after is they want to retain elements of a masculine society. And I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I mean, what would you consider a masculine element of society?
Yeah, so if we were going to look at it through traits, for instance, some of the things you would consider masculinity would be things like stoicism, rough and tumble play. This is the kind of more masculine element in society. And what the right really seems to reject or be the most upset about is kind of the lack of masculinity, as it's called toxic. It's called all this other type of stuff.
Well, that's kind of, I would actually like to talk to you about that, because a lot of the times the toxic masculinity conversation is honestly misconstrued. And that's because there are truthfully a lot of dumb fucks, like dumb fuck liberal lefty types, that weaponize what was once actually an academic term to just mean anything they want it to mean. Anytime they don't like someone, it's just toxic masculinity. But the thing is that there's something you said. So there are certain, like, I guess, masculine traits you mentioned. Like, yeah, if guys want to like rough and tough play or whatever, I don't really see a problem with that. But when you say stoicism, I do have just a little bit of an issue with that. Is, of course, everyone should generally have, like, be able to control themselves in public and not be like freaking the fuck out every like around or over everything. But it depends on how far you want to take that, because see, the toxic masculinity thing, what that actually is trying to get at is that there are some expectations of masculinity that end up being toxic to the man. So stoicism, for example, I would say oftentimes if it's forced, if it's, you're a man, you need to shut the fuck up, suck it up and deal with it. Now, there are certainly instances, I agree, where you do need to actually just suck it up and deal with it. But right. There are also other times where it's like, it's unhealthy to tell someone, you're a boy, you're a man, you can't cry, you can't express, like, men need to be able to express their emotions in a like healthy way and be able to like cry and be able to be emotional if that's like how they feel. Now, again, I'm not saying that you should be sobbing all over the place, but like,
and neither should women, right? Neither should women, really.
Right? Like, just if we're in a decent society, you probably wouldn't be like just see people like breaking down, sobbing in their day-to-day job, of course. But like, it's oftentimes this idea that like you're a man, so you need to be stoic constantly. You can't really show any sign of maybe weakness, because oftentimes, see, again, it would sort of come back to, why is stoicism so important? Isn't it ultimately because
I'll tell you my take on it. You can critique it. I don't think that you really will, though. You're a father. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I enjoy drawing as a contrast, for instance, if a Groyper attacks Hunter Avallone, I might say to a Groyper, for instance, well, he has wife and kids, and you pretend that that's your highest value. So if a Groyper pretends that that's his highest value, then why is he attacking you? He doesn't have a wife and children, right? Doesn't make a lot of sense. Doesn't make a lot of sense. But your children do look to you for leadership. And so if you fall apart when your children need you, that would be an instance where stoicism would be pretty much critical, wouldn't it?
Well, sure. But again, that doesn't really apply necessarily to just a man. Like, you wouldn't want the mom breaking down in front of her kids necessarily either. So I would kind of have to push back on it that being just a like masculine thing. Of course you have to control yourself in front of your children, and there are times where in order to protect them, you cannot show how worried you really are. I completely understand that. But again, I don't mean that there's like, and again, I'm not saying that in every instance you should just be breaking down sobbing, but just this idea that you are a man, so you cannot express these emotions ever, That's more the harmful
I
thing.
don't really
So
think that that's the stoicism that they're talking about. They're not talking about stoicism in the sense that you can't break down in front of your friends or things like that. What they're talking about is the perception that people have of you as a man. They tend to want to see strength. And when they're talking about strength, they're talking about internal character more than anything. So when you're teaching your kids a lesson, you're not teaching them a lesson by using force. You don't need to, right? But you're using strength of will and strength of character, and that is really what guides them, right? You have these children that you have to guide. You're completely 100% responsible for them. You can't just let them appeal to your emotion or bargain you out of things that are terrifically bad for them, things like this. You have to, in some sense, show a large degree of stoicism. And even with a wife, you have to do that. You have to show a large degree of stoicism. If they're down and things are crumbling around them, one of the best things that you can do sometimes is just be a rock, even if you're scared to death yourself, right?
well, I can agree with this. And again, it's kind of goes back to what I'm saying is I think where we're sort of, I think where we're kind of disaligning here is like, of course, there are instances where it is good to be stoic, but the two things that I feel like we're sort of looping back around in is that doesn't just apply to the man. That would apply technically to any parent. They shouldn't really be breaking down in front of their kids. But yeah, and also what I'm saying is just this general idea that you're a man, you cannot cry, you can't express your emotions, you need to suck it up, stop being a girl, stop being a woman. And believe me, that might sound exaggerated and a little hyperbolic, but that happens. Like there
Well,
are.
how come the critique never goes the other way?
What do
I'm
you
not
mean?
saying like they don't say to women, for instance, stop trying to act like a man, act like a woman. How come
Well,
the critique
no.
is
I'm
only
saying
go
that
one
critique
direction?
is bad. Saying stop acting like a woman because they're crying or something. I'm saying that's harmful, and that ultimately leads to provable like psychological damage, especially if it's leading to like a repression of their feelings or their emotions. And it's just it really again like I would be the first one to say, and I think we agree here for sure, that there are absolutely like important qualities that you should teach people and teach your son also. Yes, that you should work to be the provider for your family. That, but again, I would circle back to, but just if you're not the provider of the family, that doesn't necessarily make you less of a man. It might just mean that maybe in this instance, you're better suited for this position and your wife is better for this position. Like it doesn't always have to be like the man is this way, the woman's this way. And the
Right.
toxic, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to ramble. Sorry, but
No, you're not rambling. I was just listening. One of the things that I'd like to kind of push back on a little bit when you understand the conservative mindset. You were one for a long time before you kind of moved over towards the center. The mindset, generally speaking, is that the conservative believes that the hierarchical structure exists within nature. And so one of the things that we often look at is we say, look, when you're looking at a dynamic family, we do know from studies that the nuclear family, what you would consider the nuclear family, or the cross-generational family, you have the grandparents who live with you, maybe the two parents, right, this type of thing. Children do best in that environment, right? They're hands down. Now, that's not to say they can't do better in other environments. They can and have and been highly successful. But
how do you
that's
define the nuclear family? That would be what I would, my first question.
well, it
Because
wouldn't.
I generally agree
I
with
don't think
you.
of it as a nuclear family. I consider it a cross generational family. So the way that I think of it is like the nuclear family. Traditionally, the way people think of it is they go the wife and the husband and the children. I think of it as cross generational. Maybe you have grandparents who are there, or grandkids who live with you, or this type of thing. That's always been fairly common throughout history as well. When I look at it, though, you can see the outcomes of people who live in a two-parent household where the parents are married. Religious people, their happiness threshold's a little bit higher. This type of thing, and the reason for all of that, it creates these kind of better outcomes generally for kids. And so I think the conservatives latch on to more of that stoic, traditional kind of Christian value structure because it does seem to work really well within the dynamics of a
And
household.
yeah, I would definitely push back on this a little bit. So I agree with you in the sense that a nuclear family, as far as two parents married, raising children, is by far the best environment for a child at the end of the day.
Yeah.
100%. But the thing is, and you might not agree with me on this, but the data also shows pretty significantly that that applies to gay parents also. This isn't a man and a woman. This is just a two-parent household at the end of the day. And a lot of that is stability.
It's interesting, though, not with lesbians, just with homosexual males. The outcomes are far worse. Yeah, it's true. The outcomes are far worse for lesbians in general.
I would have to see which. I would have to see which one.
The outcomes are far worse for lesbians in general. They go to jail far more often. The children raised by them have worse outcomes more often. It's bizarre.
I think that I know they have usually worse outcomes by single moms.